All right, go ahead.
We're here on the Sports Objective podcast, and we got a very special guest. And we have Kyle from LaGrange Barber going upside down and all around, dancing on the ceiling. Hey, Bubba Rosenbaum, what's up, man?
What's going on, guys?
And just to be clear here, guys, y'all don't let me step on Dave, Bubba, but me and Dave or Dave can hear me. I can't hear Dave, so yeah, I apologize in advance if I step on Dave.
All right, and Bubba, we have a very special guest.
Absolutely. Here, I guess it's back in mid-March, and the Pirates made the announcement that Ryan McManus will be joining Coach Mike Houston's staff as the Senior Offensive Analyst. Right now, we're very excited to have with us his father, Jerry McManus, who coached on Steve Logan and John Thompson's staff from 96 to 2004. Welcome in, Coach McManus.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Hey, Coach, glad to have you on, and certainly remember those great glory, what we call the glory days of Pirate football, certainly. And how did you? Can you talk about how you came to Greenville and became an assistant coach under Coach Logan?
Well, I was at Wake Forest prior to that, and Cliff Yoshida, who was on Coach Logan's staff, was with us at Wake Forest, and then Todd Berry, if you remember, was the running back coach.
Yeah.
And then Todd left and took the Illinois State head coaching job. So they were looking for a running back coach, and Cliff recommended me to Coach Logan. So I came down, interviewed with Coach Logan, Coach Martin, and he offered me the job, and I took it immediately. I right there shook his hand, said I was glad to move to Greenville, and one of the best moves I've made professionally.
So, Coach, during those years, as you were coming in, the Pirates were coming off back-to-back Liberty Bowl appearances, a lot of momentum. I guess 3 bowls in the last 5 years, going back to the Peach Bowl season, 1991. So, a lot of good things are going on in Greenville. And just talk about as you were coming onto the scene, the Pirates had quite the offensive line, and then Scott Harley emerging as a tremendous running back.
Well, the best thing coming into the program is I knew we had talent. You know, we had an outstanding offensive line, as you mentioned, great quarterback in Marcus Crandall. And, you know, Scott really came on the scene right when I came out and coaching him. And it was really a great situation. We had some excellent receivers, you know, with Larry Shannon, Jason Nichols, and good tight ends. And so I knew offensively that I was walking into a good situation, and really enjoyed the coaching, enjoyed working with Steve and Doug Martin, and the offensive staff were really good guys. So I knew this was a gold mine. It was just a matter of putting everything together. And fortunately, we won our share of games.
Coach, not to take anything away from Scott Harley or the job you did as running backs coach, but you mentioned when you came in and the offensive line and Mark Crandall and Larry Shannon and some of the other receivers, when you have an offense that has a reputation of having a really good passing game and a quarterback that was well thought of as Marcus Crandall was, and a guy like Larry Shannon who played a little bit in the NFL, how much easier, I don't want to say easier, but easier does that make the running back's job when, you know, they have to focus so much on the passing game?
Well, I think the thing in the running backs and coaching running backs, you got to do 2 things. Number 1, you can't fumble. Number 2, you better pass protect. And if you can do those 2 things, then you're going to have a chance in the offense that Coach Logan was doing at the time there, because that was the main thing is we were throwing the ball down the field, play action pass, but we were running the zone play, counter, doing things along those lines. So that was the one thing as a running back. You're going to get opportunities, but depending on how you perform is how many opportunities you're actually going to get.
Yeah.
And with the
Coach,
offense,
I was going to ask you as far as the running game itself. Pirates have struggled the last few seasons with the running game. Is there any other advice you would give as far as I know Coach Houston's going to do a great job now, but what is it going to take for us to get a running game? And I know the coach wants to play great defense.
Well, I think in everything, I know Coach Shank does a great job with the offensive line. So you're already, in a good situation there. And a lot of things, in the running game, it's, you know, it's timing. You know, people don't realize that one thing that, let's say you mentioned Scott Harley, that helped him. He wasn't Chris Johnson's speed. He didn't have that kind of speed, which enabled him in that scheme of offense to see the holes and really do a good job in seeing how the offensive line was setting it up. Where sometimes, you know, the fast backs would miss those holes because they'd run too quickly and wouldn't let it develop. And I think it's a timing situation that's coordinated between the offensive line and the running back. But, you know, I feel with, you know, the situation now, I think it's just a matter of time. The running game will get good because you've got too many good coaches there. They'll definitely get it going.
And Coach, during your time in Greenville, we mentioned Scott Harley, that 96 season. The Pirates had wins over the likes of Miami, South Carolina, NC State. He ran for more than 1,700 yards. But during your time with the Pirates, and you had the opportunity, in addition to Scott, to coach the likes of Jamie Wilson, Leonard Henry, Marvin Towns, Art Brown, some tremendous. What are some memories of those guys?
Well, I tell you what, they were all a little bit different, but every one of them was a pleasure to coach. You know, and that was the best thing about those guys, that you know, when they all waited for their turn, and when they, you know, Scott, after Scott left, you know, it was Jamie and Leonard's turn, and then after they left, you know, then it was Art and Marvin were getting there. Then obviously when Marvin and Art left, then, you know, we were fortunate to have Chris Johnson. So it was just a great situation. But all those kids wanted the football. They were very, very coachable kids. And I think that was the best thing that I really enjoyed, coaching every one of them.
Coach, obviously during your time here, there was a lot of big wins. You know, NC State '96, the wins over South Carolina. But I guess the one that immediately comes to mind, a lot of Pirates' minds, is the Hurricane Floyd game against the Miami Hurricanes in Raleigh at Carter Finley. What are your memories of that game?
Well, one was that we were down in Columbia all week and never got a chance to get back to Greenville. And so we were down there practicing for a couple of days until they finally got tired of seeing us and kicked us out and told us to get on, get back up, you know, go to a high school and coach, you know, practice up there. And then ended up going right to Raleigh and just playing the game, never, you know, never going home. But just the emotion, I tell you, the fans were awesome. That game, you know, they let everybody in early. So when we came out pregame warm up, it was like, oh man, the emotion in that stadium, everybody got jacked up, and I knew we were ready to play. And even though there was a distraction because of the hurricane and practicing on high school fields and that kind of stuff, you know, our kids had that little look in their eye that they were ready to play.
What was the locker room like after that win? I would imagine the locker room and then the ride back to Greenville has to be something you still remember.
Oh yeah, it was like we won the national championship. It was just crazy, you know. It just everybody congratulating each other. It was just great to see after the week we went through, and it was kind of like a big relief, you know, after the South Carolina game, winning that game, staying down there, and then beating Miami. I think the players just said, you know, we went through a tough week, but you know, we stuck together as a team. We played as a team, and I guarantee you, every one of those kids remember that game.
Yeah.
Coach, one of the things I remember about that comeback against Miami, we obviously hadn't run the football a ton in that game, but when we did have some success there in the second half, a lot of it was with the sprint draw to Jamie Wilson, a couple of touchdowns off that play.
It was 280 draw. That's the name of it, 280 draw. And, you know, Jamie did a great job. You know, it was kind of David would roll out like we're sprinting out, and he'd slip that ball to Jamie, and Jamie would just be patient enough to let things develop and really hit the backside and gain a lot of big yards on that play. But that we call that 280, 290 draw. And he really did a great job in seeing as the offensive line was blocking, seeing where the holes were. And the big thing that with Jamie, he would stick his foot in the ground and he would get north and south. And in that game, when you're playing guys like Miami, you can't go east and west. You do that, those boys will run you down. So at least he stuck his foot in the ground and got some positive yards for us.
Yeah, you mentioned David Garrard and talking about Jamie Wilson, and it makes me think of the option that Garrard used to run. How involved were you as a running backs coach in the option game, coaching that up?
Well, we were all on the same page, obviously, with Coach Martin being the offensive coordinator, and it was really good for us if people realized down in the red zone with David that we would run that speed option in the red zone. And, David was almost like, he was big enough to be another running back there. So if they ended up taking David coming down the line, he'd pitch the ball, or if they were worried about the running back on the option part of it, on the pitch part, David was strong enough to stick his foot in the ground and get north and get up the field. So, no, it was a good scheme for us. It kind of gave us a new wrinkle, and Coach Logan and Coach Martin, he really emphasized that this was going to kind of give a good equalizer down in the red zone.
To ask you about that tremendous 2001 season that Leonard Henry had. Obviously, he was an Eastern North Carolina guy from nearby Clinton. And I think a lot of times that maybe his 2001 season where he rushed for what ranked, is the second best season in East Carolina history with more than 1,400 yards and 16 touchdowns and just the absurd nearly 8 yards per carry. I think that may get overlooked at times since we unfortunately end up going 6-6. But what are your memories of that season? Just a remarkable effort by Leonard Henry and the offensive line.
Well, Leonard was the first player that I ever recruited at East Carolina. So when I got there, he committed to me when I first got there, and he was always been a special person in coaching him because he was I'll never forget, believe it or not, he was the most homesick running back I've ever coached, being from Clinton. Oh my gosh, it was bad. He wanted to get back to Clinton so bad. And it was like, just give it a chance, Leonard. Give it a chance. You're going to be fine, And to this day, I always tease him. I said, I've never coached a running back that was more homesick than Leonard Henry. But he was a north and south runner. He was a guy that was extremely strong in between the tackles. I mean, you're not going to get him down with an arm tackle. I mean, you're going to have to really hit him. And same thing, loved to practice, came to practice every day, didn't say a word, just did his job. And I'll tell you what, he's one of my favorites. He was a pleasure to coach, and he's very successful today. And he's doing his ministry down home in Clinton, and he is really a special guy.
Did y'all explain to Leonard that he could hop in the car and be back down to Clinton in about an hour or so?
Oh, we did it all. Yeah, we tried. We said, yeah, go. You're not that far away. I mean, you're not on the West Coast. You're not in California. You're right here in Greenville. So, and it was just one of those things that he'll laugh about it now, but at the time he was serious.
Kind of following up on what you're saying, Coach, I saw Leonard here within the last year or so say something about that on Facebook. He had posted a picture from back in, I guess it was 98, and he had commented under it saying that is one homesick pup.
And that was him. Oh, there was no question. It was something, but like I said, he really was a guy that, was a model running back, just the way his practice, the way he prepared himself. He was always into the weight room, strong physically, always took good care of himself, good academically, no issues in the classroom. And like I said, you knew every Saturday he was going to give you his best. There was no doubt about that.
Coach, you mentioned one of my favorite people in college football, Doug Martin, a couple times. Doug's still out at New Mexico State. You coached with him at Kent State. I've always followed Doug, and I remember when Skip left to take the head coaching job down at USF. I tried to start a campaign to get Doug Martin to be the head coach. East Carolina, of course, we got Ruffin, and I was happy with that. But Talk about your relationship with Coach Martin.
Oh, Coach Martin's a good man. He and I call. We talk about once a month.
Coach, you with us?
A lot of Doug and his family.
Guys, did we lose Coach Mack?
He has done a great job. Did a good job at Kent State. You know, that's not a tough situation to be in, but we won some games there. Had some good players, you know, and got things going there for a little bit. And you know, I know a couple of years ago he went to a bowl game at New Mexico State, and I coached out there before he got the head job, and I know that's a tough job out there.
Guys, I can't hear anything. So, if you guys can
you know,
hear, carry on.
I know he's working hard to try to keep it going, so which is good, and I think he'll be, you know, he'll try to get that thing turned around.
Absolutely. Somebody else I wanted to ask you about earlier, I mentioned Art Brown and Marvin Towns. Those guys had 1,000-yard seasons in 2002 and 2003. Talk about Art. I'm from just south of Winston-Salem. I went to North Davidson High School in Lexington and grew up in the Winston-Salem area. And so I was very familiar with Art Brown. I was very excited when he made that decision to become a Pirate.
Well, so was I, because I tell you, Art was one of the heavily recruited players in the state of North Carolina coming out of high school, you know, and for us to get him, you know, I was really excited because I knew, you know, Mount Tabor, I knew he was coached over there, you know, Bob Sapp and those guys, and they do a good job. And Art really was he had great vision and great feet. Art can see holes that most people couldn't see and get through them. It's really a shame that he got hurt. His groin that year, his last year, and was never himself again. But boy, when he got on the football field, when he was healthy, he could really, really do a great job running the ball. Marvin was a guy that, you know, same thing, took him a while physically to get stronger. And once he hit that weight room and got stronger, he had great speed. He could run, and he was one of those guys, you know, kind of almost like Chris, you know, once they get in the secondary, it was over. Nobody was going to catch him. And then Marvin finally got his chance. You know, he went through a season where he was having cramps. He just couldn't get ready to play. All of a sudden, we put him in the game, and he'd come out and said he was cramped up, couldn't play. And then finally, his last year there, he really did a great job running the football. And good guy to work practice-wise. And same thing, no issues academically, off the field. Good hard worker, Marvin Towns.
Like you were saying about Art Brown, I remember, like you were saying, him battling the injuries there in that 2003 season, but I remember him getting in a game against Army at Dowdy Ficklin, and that was awesome to see him have a touchdown run that helped us win going away in that one against the Black Knights.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. It's a shame that Art got hurt. When he was healthy, I mean, he was really coming along and was really, as far as running the football, could get that ball in the end zone, was off to a great start. And even his last year, unfortunately, getting hurt kind of set him back a little bit. And that kind of opened the door for Marvin, because Marvin was kind of behind Art, because Art was playing, you know, we were trying to split time a little bit, but it was hard to do that with running backs. You know, you always want to go with the guy that's got the hot hand. And so when Art was running the football, he was getting some positive yards for us. Marvin would come in, kind of get some big chunks for us, which was good. But both of those guys, that was a good combination to have, good depth. You know, you could put either one of them in there and you knew you were going to have success.
Coach, a question from Dave. I think Dave was having a few technical difficulties, but Dave wanted me to ask, prior to you making that decision to go into coaching, or just talk about that path into coaching, because he knew that you had originally wanted to go into broadcasting when you were coming out of Wake Forest.
Well, that's funny you said that, because I was my senior year at Wake. I had one more year to graduate, a semester to graduate. So Coach Mills was the head coach at Wake Forest at that time, and said, "Why don't you be kind of like a student assistant?" And then I was a quarterback at Wake, but he put me on the defensive side of the ball. He said, "I want you to learn defense." So then that year at Wake Forest that I helped out, I really got the bug to coach and really enjoyed that. Then became a graduate assistant up at Virginia Tech with Bill Dooley, who was one of the really premier football coaches at the time, just left North Carolina, went to Virginia Tech, and got to know him quite well. And once I spent a couple of years with Coach Dooley, I knew coaching was in my blood. And he was kind of the guy that got me into coaching, got me moving forward in this profession. And 37 years later, I finally left the coaching profession, and but still coaching down here, doing some high school football down here in Venice, and really enjoying that. I'm not teaching; I just show up, coach football, coach coach quarterbacks, call the offensive plays on Friday night, and enjoy working with these young men down here in Venice.
And you're talking about being in Venice. I know there's at least one familiar face for Pirate Nation that you're coaching with down there, and that is, of course, Larry Shannon, the excellent Pirate wide receiver from 93 to 97. So talk about what it's like to coach on the same staff with Larry.
Oh, it's great. I mean, Larry's our defensive coordinator. I don't know if people realize that because, obviously being an offensive receiver and playing in the NFL, but Larry's our defensive coordinator. And Larry has done a great job with our defense. And let me tell you what, he is still as intense as a coach as he is as a player. I mean, on Friday night now, you can hear him up and down the field because he does a good job in getting our players lined up. And you don't want to come on that sideline if you made a mistake because he'll be right in your face. Kind of like the way Steve Logan was in his face at that NC State game.
Absolutely. We joked about that before we went live, Coach. I remember that well, that day in Charlotte at what was then Erickson Stadium when Larry caught that touchdown pass in the fourth quarter against the Wolfpack. And you saw it on the replay. I was like, where did he have the towel? And then he was pulling it out of his pants. So it was pretty funny.
Yeah, well, it's funny now. It wasn't funny at the time because there was a lot of people upset. And number one, you could see the veins popping out of Steve Logan's neck, so that was a big thing there. But yes, once in a while we tease Larry a little bit about that, but no, he's been coaching down here with John Peacock, who's our head coach, who was a Pirate and then transferred to Georgia Southern. And so we've got some Pirate connections down here in Venice. And so I think it's really good. And they're great guys to work with. I've enjoyed it down here. I've been coaching down here since 16 and enjoyed working with these young men. We've got our quarterback that we've had a couple of years ago was a player of the year, is now the quarterback at Coastal Carolina. Quarterback we had 2 years ago is now the starting quarterback at Old Dominion. So we've had some pretty good players come through here, and we've got a group of young kids coming up now that we've been pretty successful, and hopefully we can keep it going.
Before we transition over and talk about Ryan, because that's obviously one of the reasons we wanted to have you on as well, to talk about the opportunity he has to be on Coach Mike Houston's staff. Obviously, Coach Logan, he had some different professional jobs, and then also has served as a radio host here in the state of North Carolina in Raleigh. Within 1 hour show, at least 1 hour, maybe more than 1 hour on every Saturday morning, does an excellent job, very entertaining. And that's kind of funny, but considering when he was coaching, he didn't particularly like doing his show. But talk about Coach Logan, and you stay in contact with him.
I do. Yeah, I stay in touch with Steve. We've talked even last year when he was coaching in the Alliance. And, we always kind of visit a little bit, but no, I'd say one thing. Steve Logan was one of the best coaches to work for because he got it. He wasn't going to be one of those coaches that's going to stay all night till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And being a young coach with a family of, with my kids, with 3 children, it was always refreshing to go home and have dinner with my kids. And that's one thing I admire Steve about, is that, we'd go in there, get our work done, and when it was time to leave, we were gone. We weren't just sitting around guarding our desk. And he's a very knowledgeable coach, smart football coach, knows a lot about offenses, defense, how to run a program. And now he is certainly one of the premier coaches at his time, really ahead of his game, especially in the passing game. He had a really great knowledge of the passing game.
Absolutely. Kind of shifting gears and talking about your son Ryan. I know he is a Greenville native, had the opportunity to play at nearby D.H. Conley and Hollywood Crossroads, as they say. But he kind of followed in your footsteps from the standpoint that he went to Wake Forest and was a Demon Deacon quarterback. I believe he was playing during that time when Riley Skinner was the starter. Right. So just talk about that opportunity he had to be a Demon Deacon and just the path he's taken into coaching, and then we'll talk about his previous stop prior to East Carolina, which was at Winston-Salem State.
Well, he was a backup quarterback to Riley, and that's the year they went to the Orange Bowl and played Louisville in the Orange Bowl, and so he got a chance to experience really some success there at Wake Forest, and I kind of felt like down the road that he might get into coaching. And when he spoke with Jim Grove, who was the head coach at the time at Wake Forest, he asked Ryan to be a graduate assistant. And I think Ryan really got into, saw how our lives changed, the different places that I've been to. I've been to 10 different universities, and all of them, have been good, have been enjoyable. It was a great way to raise a family. I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. But I told him, I said, now, worked out for me. You got to decide if that's the path that you want to take. And so, he's bounced around. He got to be a GA, been a high school coach out of South Brunswick. And then you mentioned just recently he was quarterbacks coach there at Winston-Salem State, and now coming to East Carolina, which I think is a tremendous move. And got to thank Coach Shank for helping him out down to get that job down there. And I'm looking forward to coming back and watching some Pirate football, because that's one on my bucket list. When I was coach, I said one day I want to come back, tailgate, and watch some Pirate football.
Absolutely. You'll certainly have the opportunity to see it from a different perspective. And just talking about the hats that Ryan wore during his time at Winston-Salem State, I know you talked about him being the quarterback's coach. I believe I read that he was the offensive play caller. So even though he wasn't technically the OC, he was kind of serving as a co-OC, maybe, if you will. And then he also, I saw, was the director of operations. And then also the golf coach?
Also the golf coach. You got to wear a lot of hats at Winston-Salem State. Yeah. So, but we got there. It was a great experience for him, because he got a chance to get back into college and then working with quarterbacks and then calling the offensive plays. Natron Means was the offensive coordinator who played running back for the Chargers and at Carolina, but he let Ryan call the plays. And I thought that was good. And I told him that's a great experience calling football plays. So that was a good for him. And then, of course, being involved in operations and handling travel, that's always good, because then you're dealing with administrators and money and those kind of things. So I said, that's another plus for you. And then, they were looking for a golf coach, and he applied and really enjoyed being the golf coach. Only got to go to one tournament. Then the situation in East Carolina opened up for him. So I said, well, you've always got that on your resume that you were the golf coach at Winston-Salem State. So he's had some good experiences early in his career. I think this one coming to East Carolina is by far the best and the biggest, because, Coach Houston's staff, and I know, Coach Kirkpatrick, and I know obviously Coach Shank, and there's some guys on that staff that I know Ryan's going to learn a lot from, and it can help him professionally and help him, down the road. So he'll learn a lot of football there.
Absolutely. And Coach Mike Houston's obviously had success everywhere he's been, going back to his time at TC Robertson in the high school ranks up in the North Carolina mountains. And then he had the opportunity to get in college coaching, and then what he did at Lenore Ryan and then the Citadel and then obviously James Madison, where he nearly won 2 national titles. Those things speak for themselves. And Coach Houston, certainly not only has he had that success, but the way he's had the opportunity or been able to assemble some tremendous coaching staffs and really has the eye for those young up-and-coming coaches. It's a tremendous opportunity for Ryan.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about that. And like I said, I appreciate Coach Houston hiring Ryan. And like I think it's, I told Ryan it's a great move professionally. You know, you get to learn from how other people do it. And with Coach Houston's background and where he's been, I think it's only a plus. And I'm really looking forward to meeting Coach Houston. I've never met him, so I'm looking forward to meeting him and getting up and watching some football games here pretty soon.
And the league that the Pirates are competing in now, the American, is obviously one of the best in the country. Even though it's out of the so-called Power Five, a term we don't even like to acknowledge, but it is out there. And but the league has had tremendous success, and with everything that East Carolina has at its disposal, like Coach Houston said, I think it's just a matter of time before he and his staff get East Carolina football back to where it's been before.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about that, because I've always said this, there's plenty of great, good talent in Eastern North Carolina high school football where you can get your share of the East. And I think that was one of the success stories that we had at East Carolina when I was there. We were able to get some good in-state Eastern North Carolina football players, like you mentioned, the Leonard Henrys and that kind of Marvin Towns, those kind of guys. And I think that's, the recruiting is so important, and that's your lifeline right now. And I know they'll do a great job in the Tidewater area, Eastern North Carolina, wherever you need to get football players, because East Carolina will sell itself. You get kids on campus, and especially on a game day, and the enthusiasm and the Pirate fans there. I mean, to me, that was the best thing that I enjoyed about coaching. It was all football. It was football, and the fans came out and supported the football team. And recruiting, if you could ever get a kid on campus, there was a good chance he was going to sign with you.
Now, Coach, as we're starting to wrap this thing up, I know you said that you're not actually teaching, that you're just coaching. But tell us about how things are down there in Florida. Is school already out for the remainder of the year? And just how are you and your family doing?
Yeah, we're doing fine. They have canceled school down here till May 3rd. Which the chances are pretty slim that we'll even go back. We have a staff meeting tonight, and we're talking about now probably we're supposed to start spring football April 27th, and there's a chance that we probably won't even have spring football this year. But down in Florida, they allow you in the summer to work with your whole football team in shorts, no pads, with a football. So pretty much when we get back into our summer program, hopefully June 8th, that we'll kind of do a similar weightlifting conditioning program, but probably have practices to kind of get ourselves ready, because we start school August 10th here, and our first game is a endowment game that Friday night for, I think it's the 17th. So, it's going to be tough, a little unusual under the circumstances, especially without spring football, but we're all safe down here. Everybody's just adjusting and trying to keep social distancing, and hopefully within the near future, we can get back to some normality.
And Coach, in addition to Ryan, tell our listeners, or viewers, I should say, about the rest of your family, because I know I was reading an article in preparation for this interview, and I know you had a daughter who went to Wake Forest, and she was just talking about how difficult that was when East Carolina and Wake Forest were playing, because obviously part of her wanted to pull for her school, but then at the same time she couldn't pull against you and the Pirates.
Well, yeah, that was a tough time, because Kelly, my oldest daughter, she lives in D.C. right now, and she is a diehard Deacon fan. She went to Wake and loved Wake Forest and enjoyed that. So the years that Wake and East Carolina would play, that would get a little tense. As a matter of fact, the one year, I think it was Jim Grove's first game, we played Wake at Dowdy Ficklin, got beat on a 2-point play. And so that was the day she got accepted into Wake Forest. So I remember that one big time. But we've had a couple. When I was coaching at Louisiana Monroe, we were playing Wake Forest when Ryan was a graduate assistant there. So that kind of divided the family a little bit. The girls, Ryan, were for the Deeks, and I was by myself then. So I was with ULM. So that was a tough one there. But Katie, my youngest daughter, she graduated from Virginia Tech. So when we had games with Virginia Tech, we'd always have a little bit of the family would be a little bit divided. So it's been good. No, everybody's doing well. Katie's living in Connecticut right now, Norwalk, Connecticut, and she works for Cannondale Bicycles, so she's doing well. And everybody's happy that now we can start meeting in Greenville again, because we've got a lot of great memories and some great friends in Greenville. So we're looking forward to getting down there and reconnecting with a lot of people.
Absolutely. Obviously, the situation we're currently going through with our society and just our world in general is certainly not ideal, but at the same time, you just have to turn it into a positive the best you can, and use it as an opportunity for a kind of rebirth or revitalization and those sorts of things to refocus on some of the things that maybe you neglected to pay as much attention to and spend as much time on as you should have.
I didn't catch that last one. I didn't catch it.
I was just saying, with everything we're going through as a society and a world right now with the coronavirus, the COVID-19 outbreak, just how it's an opportunity for renewal and refocus as a society, and just more so, whether it's a team or a family, and just focus on some of the key elements of life that maybe we haven't spent as much time on because of our lives being so busy.
Well, I think right now the idea of just kind of everything settling down and being able to, take a deep breath and enjoy each day. That's kind of what I've been, dealing and telling my family, and just say, hey, right now we're in this situation. Let's do our due diligence as far as our social distancing and being smart when we travel, where we go. But the big thing is enjoy each day, enjoy getting outside and walking or bike riding or whatever you need to do to get out of the house. But kind of got to take things a little more seriously, and don't take things for granted anymore, because you're only day by day. That's all you're guaranteed is today.
Absolutely, no doubt about it, Coach. Well, you've been very generous with your time. It's been awesome catching up, taking a trip down memory lane, and then also talking about your son Ryan being a part of Mike Houston's staff moving forward. We'd love to have you back on the show sometime down the road.
Oh, that'd be great. Love to do it, Bubba. Thank you very much.
All right, Pirate Nation, that is former East Carolina assistant coach Jerry McManus. Take care, Coach.
Okay, thank you, Bubba. Take care.